Okay, cool. So anyway, here's what's in y'all's neck of the woods. Not too many, but let's see what we got going on here. If I can get this thing to advance. There we go. All right. So this one was submitted by Alan. Not the most beautiful mushroom. We saw a Criticii in the photo contest, which this might be. I'm kind of not wanting to put names on Ganodermas these days because they seem to have changed. And it's anyway, it may be Criticii, but we were just talking about Thomas Rail, and he had that presentation, if you guys remember, talking about determinate and indeterminate growth, where determinate, it's all formed and kind of pushes things out the way, and indeterminate, where it just encompasses stuff. And so you can see this guy is just eating, not eating it, but it's just growing, engulfing all that grass. It's kind of neat. Anyway, that's one of the Ganodermas, could be Criticii, reishi. They have medicinal qualities. Next one here, submitted by Elizabeth. I believe she said her mom found this one down in Florida at her house. I always like finding this one. You can find this one here. We've seen it not too long ago. So this actually has kind of teeth, and the name used to be Spongiopellis Pachydon. That's what I know it as, but apparently they've changed it to Erpisiporus Pachydon. Same mushroom. Spongiopellis it does have a bit of a spongy top to it. And the teeth are really kind of cool looking if you go close. It's a little blurry, but I tried to zoom in. They're kind of flat and tapered. So they're kind of chunky, and I don't know, I think they're kind of neat looking. Anyway, it's one of the polypores. So this one's submitted by April Thompson. Looking kind of gnarly. If you look close, you might be able to see, well, not too much, but she did say there was some blue coloration, some staining in this one. I had a hard time finding it in the photos that she sent. But this, big orange mushroom, it has actually kind of good smell if you smell it. It would be bitter if you tasted it. Has a ring. It would have a rusty spore print. Found growing on rotting wood or, stumps and things of that nature. And the blue staining would indicate that it may have some psilocybin in it. So it can be an active mushroom. Some collections do, some collections don't, apparently. I'm putting Junonia. She said that it may have been some species I had not heard of. And then she said she talked to someone else and they said, oh, it's probably Spectabilis, which is Junonius now. So they're synonyms, so one or the other. So could be what it is. I think there's probably quite a few of these that they may split it one of these days, and we might find out there's more Gymnopolis out there than we think. All right, this one's submitted by Felix Mitchell. Another connection back to Thomas Rail. If you guys saw his presentation, he did a study with using Flamulita velutipes, or the velvet foot, or the Inokis. And you can see, let's see, here, it's getting that brownish coloration, and it's getting that velvety stipe growing on it. This dark coloration is pretty indicative too. It's kind of funny. I bought, when I first started, it was a long time ago. I went to Fungi Perfecte and I got a block with Inoki on it. And I knew of Inokis as those little tall skinny things, right? Well, I grew it and they looked like this, and I was like, hey, they're turning brown. Are these the wrong mushrooms? Are they infected? Are they, I don't want to eat these. I don't know what's going on. But apparently this is what they look like when you don't have them growing in those collars to increase the CO2 production, where they get those long stipes. All right, another by April Thompson. I think everybody has probably seen some of these before. These are your kind of winter oysters. You got your shell-shaped fruiting body, decurrent gills. You can't really smell it, but that's kind of nice to give it a whiff. But this certainly looks like the winter oysters, Pleurotus ostriatus. All right, another by April. So this looks like it might be a Coronarius, but I'm not too sure. But I thought I'd put this in here because it does have these lilac gills. And there are, if you're hunting for bluets, there are some bluets that have kind of a brownish top. They call the field bluet. And they tend to have these lilac gills. Now, what you would need to do is get yourself a spore print. The bluets are going to have a light colored spore print. And if this is a Coronarius, it would have a rusty spore print. And you don't want to be eating Coronarius, whereas the bluets can be quite tasty. So I just thought I'd put that in there. I'm not too sure exactly what that is, but I think it might be a Coronarius, even though you can't really see a cortina. And a cortina is like the partial veil, like when the cap is just opening and it's like a cobwebby thing. But we don't really see the stipe very well in that. All right, this was submitted by April Wyman. This, if you remember that Flebia incarnata that Tom had, this is kind of similar. This is another Flebia. I believe this is Tremolosa. There's another one that's like radiata, and it doesn't tend to cap over. It's kind of like these guys right here, where it's kind of growing these caps over. So I think this is Tremolosa. And it also kind of has a radiating pattern on the edges usually, as it's growing across the substrate. Another by April Wyman. And this is a Heritium. I am not sure if this is a Erinaceus, which we commonly know as the pom-pom, or if it might be a young Americanum or something like that, to where maybe as this grew larger, would this start getting more branches? Or is it just kind of like an open growing Heritium, Erinaceus? I'm not certain of that. And so that kind of like, sometimes when you have multiple growth stages of the same mushroom, it can help. But this does look young, whatever it is. And all the Heritiums are edible. So that's one you wouldn't really have to worry about. Another by April Wyman. So she submitted this first picture early in the month, and then look, maybe a week or two later, she submitted this one. And I thought, well, this kind of looks like Craniformis, which is Calvacia craniformis, one of the larger puffballs. And there's a couple that can look very similar to each other. It's Craniformis and Cyathoformis. And they can look so similar, it might be really hard to tell, but when the spores start being produced, Cyathoformis has like a purple spore mass, whereas Craniformis tends to have kind of like a greenish spore mass. And if you look here, I don't know, something must have been munching on it. But right here, where it looks like the spores are starting to mature, you've got this kind of greenish coloration. So I think we could call that Calvacia craniformis, the skull-shaped puffball. Kerry Raditz found these in his yard. I think it was early November, actually, that he found these. So these are your oyster mushroom, not oyster mushrooms, honey mushrooms, your Armillaria astoye type. So they are not like the really yellow Melia type. I think they call these solidipes as well. We're kind of past honey mushrooms, although I guess we're kind of past most mushrooms at this point, aren't we? All right, Douglas Miller found this one. These were pretty common this year. I don't know if you guys were out. There seemed to be a lot of these last month. This is Ishnaderma resinosum. And he got a little shot of the underside you can see here that really shows these little resin droplets. And sometimes when you find them young, they'll just be filled with these things on the underside. Sometimes there's none. It's kind of cool that he got a shot that actually has some of the little resin droplets. It's kind of fleshy, feels kind of like fresh, young chicken of the woods when you find it. Apparently it's edible. I've never tried it. I don't know if anybody else has. anyway, that's kind of a fun find. I always like finding that one. All right, we had the foliotas earlier. This, I think, is Oravella. So as Tom mentioned, they usually have scales like this. And so this one has its scales. This would have a dark spore print, kind of like a brownish rusty spore print. It's a wood decomposer. Most of the foliotas I don't think of as good edibles. So, but they can be nice and showy. All right, so this was a really kind of cool one that's very unusual. Elizabeth Hargraves found this one. This is the ladybug fungus, Hesperomyces virescens. This one kind of has a cool story. So this is actually an ascomycete fungi, and it has bicellular spores. It's also an ectoparasite. And so what's happening is the that little double spore lands on the beetle, and the little foot starts growing, and it pokes a hole into the exoskeleton, and it grows like a little branch structure, and it essentially just kind of starts drinking the blood. If you want to call insect juice blood, but so it's not really blood, but anyway, it's sipping the juices out of the beetle, like a juice box or something. And so each of those different spores actually turn into, one's a male and one's a female, and they can fertilize them itself. And what happens is, apparently ladybugs are quite promiscuous, and so they tend to have lots of sex with multiple partners. And this is actually a sexually transmitted disease in ladybugs. And so they go mate with the others and transfer the spores, and then those spores grow on the new ones. And sometimes you'll find them on the underside, and sometimes you'll find them on the back. And apparently it sometimes can actually, depending on if it's a male or a female, it might be where the actual little fungus grows. So anyway, blood drinking, sexually transmitted ectoparasites. It's kind of cool. Anyway, that was the last one. And this is a beautiful Scleroderma citrinum. Annie, you should have submitted this one. It's a beautiful photo. Thank you for that. All right, thanks everybody. Take care.